il y a en cette livre un truc qui s'appelle le truc de Bernie Beck. This trick always works. And what it says to you is take the case that you studied and remove some of the identifying marks. So if I said my thesis is about the careers of teachers in the Chicago public schools, then my friend Professor Beck would say to me, okay, now tell me what your thesis is about, but you cannot use the word Chicago. You cannot use the word school. You cannot use the word teacher. Now, what is it about? And I found something to say. It's about careers. He allowed me this word. In a bureaucratic organization in which the jobs, the particular positions in the organizations are ranked in the eyes of the people looking for positions so that they think this one is good, this one is not so good, this one is even better, this one is worse, this is the worst, etc. And there are methods for moving from one position to another. And this is how people manage their careers in this setting. And what I found then, I could say, is a case of lateral as opposed to vertical social mobility in a bureaucracy. Because the classic description of bureaucracy is there's a hierarchy of positions, right? And a career consists of moving from this position to this one, and so on. In this case, the teachers, by the way, were very, very clear with me. They had no interest there was a hierarchy. They were not interested. They did not want to become the head of a school or an administrator in a central office. They wanted to go from this school, which had features they didn't like, to this school, which was better in those ways, that had students that were easier to teach, that had a head of the school who understood the problems of a teacher and supported the teacher when it was necessary, and so on. So I could move from this level of very specific. In Chicago, there are these problems with these schools, and these teachers do this. Now I could say, I can talk about not just teachers, but anybody in a bureaucratic organization. And I can talk about careers that not only go this way, but that go this way. And if Beck insisted, what if he said to me, no, you can't say bureaucracy? Would I still have something to say? Yes, because there is a process of career movement, of moving from one organization to another, which occurs not only in bureaucracies. Bureaucracy is the clearest case, but it's not the only case. The musicians that I wrote my master's thesis about also had careers, and they moved from one position to another. They moved more often. I mean, sometimes every week, because there were no fixed positions. If you worked someplace for 6 months, it was very unusual. So I could have done that too. Now, the problem about generalizing my case is always that you're asked to do this when you start. right? You're asked to do this, and I hear students in the United States, and I'm sure people say this here in some form, I'm going to use Weber in my thesis. I said, you're going to use Weber? I mean, which part of Weber? Which idea? Oh, well, I haven't decided yet. And very good, because it's not possible to decide that. But maybe Weber will not be the best one. I mean, that happens. I wrote a paper some years ago, which I called "How Much is Enough?" I didn't start with a theoretical idea. I started with a problem. There had been some years earlier an enormous snowstorm in Chicago. The city was paralyzed for several days and for weeks afterward, really, because it was not prepared to deal with the amount of snow that fell. They did not have enough machines. They didn't have enough people. They didn't have a plan. By the time they did something, they had managed to bury half the automobiles in Chicago under snow while they cleared out the streets. And it was just a gigantic mess. So I thought, well, that, and then there was also the problem of a heat wave. How do you say this? I know this word.
Vague de chaleur.
Canicule, because I remember the canicule here, where the same questions arose. We should have done more. We should have had more help for people, etc. And the question always arises in the case of a disaster of this kind, how much should we have? Because I remembered being in Montreal during a snowstorm that would have, it started to fall the day that I was supposed to leave and go back to California. And I thought, oh, I'm here for 4 days that I didn't plan. No. The snow hardly started when the machines were on the street. They were picking it up. It never got higher than this in the places where it was important. They had more. They were ready for more. So the question was, how much preparation is enough? Then I began to look for other cases. I live in San Francisco. San Francisco has tremblement de terre. It's not a secret. Everybody knows that someday we are going to have what people who live there call the big one. Something terrible is going to happen, as happened in 1906, when the entire city burned down. That probably won't happen, because they did make preparations. But how big of an earthquake should you be ready for? Because the problem is that the money the state or the city or you personally spend on preparations for these disasters is taken from someplace else where you could have spent it. Education for the children, help for older people, etc. All kinds of things that could be done. Better medical facilities. Then I began to generalize the problem. I first mentioned this publicly at a dinner party here in Paris. And my hostess immediately said, well, I have another interesting question for you. This was a social scientist. She said, how many pairs of shoes are enough for a woman to have? And there was a big discussion. The men were slightly puzzled, but not completely. And she went around the room and insisted that everybody say, "How many shoes do you have?" Everybody knew. That was the first, to me, the first result, the first finding. Everybody knew that, etc. Anyway, it's a long story, but I ended up being interested in how many languages should be saved, right? How many species should be saved. There's all kinds of questions that are formally similar to this. And then I thought, now I need a general theoretical idea. Okay? Can you guess where I found it? It should be obvious. Durkheim was suicide, right? The idea of anomie, when people when they have more than they need and they don't know how to spend it. And conversely, when they have less, what do they do? I mean, it's the whole problem of allocating resources that Durkheim put in a very cogent way. So that's how I try to find the general case the general version of what I'm working on. It has the difficulty that you can't tell anybody else what your general idea will be until you're through. But and as a person writing a thèse, you don't have that privilege. What you can do is lie. As you say, yes, I'm going to use these ideas. Okay. It's a matter of simple observation that if you write a good thèse, no one ever looks at the proposal that you made. No one says, "Oh, you said you were going to do this and you use this instead." No. So it's not a problem. Just make something up, treat it as an exercise, and then do your research and find the idea you really need. See, this is me being a very mauvais garçon.